momentum in these 10 years. 30 crore Mudra Yojana loans have been given to women entrepreneurs. Female enrollment in higher education has gone up by 28% in 10 years. In STEM courses, girls and women constitute 43% of enrollment, one of the highest in the world. All these measures are getting reflected in the increasing participation of women in workforce. Making triple talaq illegal, reservation of 1/3 seats for women in the Lok Sabha and state assemblies, and giving over 70% houses under PM Awas Yojana in rural areas to women, and giving over 70% houses under PM Awas Yojana in rural areas to women as sole or joint owners have enhanced their dignity. Exemplary track record of governance, development, and performance. Besides delivering on high growth in terms of gross domestic product, the government is equally focused on a more comprehensive GDP, that is, governance, development, and performance. Our government has provided transparent, accountable, people-centric, and prompt, trust-based administration with citizen-first and minimum government, maximum governance approach. The impact of all-round development is discernible in all sectors. There is macroeconomic stability, including in the external sector. Investments are robust. The economy is doing well. People are living better and earning better, with even greater aspirations for future. Average real income of the people has increased by 50%. Inflation is moderate. People are getting empowered, equipped, and enabled to pursue their aspirations. There is effective and timely delivery of programs and of large projects. Economic management. The multi-pronged economic management over the past 10 years has complemented people-centric, inclusive development. Following are some of the major elements. 1. All forms of infrastructure, physical, digital, or social, are being built in record time. Number 2. All parts of the country are becoming active participants in economic growth. Number 3, digital public infrastructure, a new factor of production in the 21st century, is instrumental in formalization of the economy. Number 4, goods and services tax has enabled one nation, one market, one tax. Tax reforms have led to deepening and widening of tax base. Number 5, strengthening of the financial sector has helped in making savings, credit, and investments more efficient. Number 6, GIFT, IFSC, and the Unified Regulatory Authority, IFSCA, are creating a robust gateway for global capital and financial services for the economy. Number 7, proactive inflation management has helped keep inflation within the policy band. Now, the global context, Honorable Speaker, sir. Geopolitically, global affairs are becoming more complex and challenging with wars and conflicts. Globalization is being redefined with reshoring and friendshoring, disruption and fragmentation of supply chains, and competition for critical minerals and technologies. A new world order is emerging after the COVID pandemic. India assumed the G20 presidency during very difficult times for the world. The global economy was going through high inflation, high interest rates, low growth, very high public debt, low trade growth, and climate changes. The pandemic has led to a crisis of food, fertilizer, fuel, and finances for the world, while India successfully navigated its way. The country showed the way forward and built consensus on solutions for those global problems. The recently announced India-Middle East-Europe economic corridor is a strategic and economic game changer for India and others. In the words of Honorable Prime Minister, the corridor, and I quote, will become the basis of world trade for hundreds of years to come, and history will remember that this corridor was initiated on Indian soil, unquote. Vision for Vikasit Bharat. Our vision for Vikasit Bharat is that of prosperous Bharat in harmony with nature, with modern infrastructure, and providing opportunities for all citizens and all regions to reach their potential. With confidence arising from strong and exemplary track record of performance and progress, earning Sabka Vishwas, the next 5 years will be years of unprecedented development and golden moments to realize the dream of developed India by 2047. The trinity of demography, democracy, and diversity, backed by Sabka Prayas, has the potential to fulfill aspirations of every Indian. As Honorable Prime Minister in his Independence Day address to the nation mentioned, I quote, there is no dearth of opportunities, as many opportunities as we want. The country is capable of creating more opportunities. Sky is the limit, unquote. Strategy for Amrit Kal. Our government will adopt economic policies that foster and sustain growth, facilitate inclusive and sustainable development, improve productivity, create opportunities for all, help them enhance their capabilities, and contribute to generation of resources to power investments and fulfill aspirations. Guided by the principle, reform, perform, and transform, the government will take up next generation reforms and build consensus with the states and stakeholders for effective implementation. It is an important policy priority for our government to ensure timely and adequate finances, relevant technologies, and appropriate training for the micro, small, and medium enterprises, MSMEs, to grow and also compete globally. Orienting the regulatory environment to facilitate their growth will be an important element of this policy mix. Aligning with the Panchamrit goals, our government will facilitate sustaining high and more resource-efficient economic growth. This will work towards energy security in terms of availability, accessibility, and affordability. For meeting the investment needs, our government will prepare the financial sector in terms of size, capacity, skills, and regulatory framework. Aspirational Districts Program. Our government stands ready to assist the states in faster development of aspirational districts and blocks, including generation of ample economic opportunities. Development of the East. Our government will pay utmost attention to make the eastern region and its people a powerful driver of India's growth. PM Awas Yojana Grameen. Despite the challenges due to COVID, Implementation of PM Awas Yojana Gramin continued, and we are close to achieving the target of 3 crore houses. 2 crore more houses will be taken up in the next 5 years to meet the requirement arising from increase in the number of families. Rooftop solarization and Muft Bijli. Through rooftop solarization, 1 crore households will be enabled to obtain up to 300 units free electricity every month. This scheme follows the resolve of Honorable Prime Minister on the historic day of consecration of Sri Ram Mandir in Ayodhya. Following benefits are expected. Savings up to 15 to 18,000 rupees annually for households from free solar electricity and selling the surplus to the distribution companies. Charging of electric vehicles. Entrepreneurship opportunities for a large number of vendors for supply and installation. Employment opportunities for the youth with technical skills in manufacturing, installation, and maintenance. Housing for middle class. Our government will launch a scheme to help deserving sections of the middle class, and I quote from Honorable Prime Minister's words, living in rented houses or slums or chawls and unauthorized colonies, unquote, to buy or build their own houses. Medical colleges. Several youth are ambitious to get qualified as doctors. They aim to serve our people through improved healthcare services. Our government plans to set up more medical colleges by utilizing the existing hospital infrastructure under various departments. A committee for this purpose will be set up to examine the issues and make relevant recommendations. Cervical cancer vaccination. Our government will encourage vaccination for girls in the age group of 9 to 14 years for prevention of cervical cancer. Maternal and child health care. Various schemes for maternal and child care will be brought under one comprehensive program for synergy in implementation. Upgradation of Anganwadi centers under Saksham Anganwadi and Poshan 2.0 will be expedited for improved nutrition delivery, early childhood care, and development. The newly designed U-Win platform for managing immunization and intensified efforts of Mission Indradhanush will be rolled out expeditiously throughout the country. Ayushman Bharat. Healthcare cover under Ayushman Bharat scheme will be extended to all ASHA workers, to all Anganwadi workers and helpers. Agriculture and food processing. The efforts of value addition in agriculture sector and boosting farmers' incomes will be stepped up. Pradhan Mantri Kisan Sampada Yojana has benefited 38 lakh farmers and generated 10 lakh employment. Pradhan Mantri Formalization of Micro Food Processing Enterprises Yojana has assisted 2.4 lakh SHGs and 60,000 individuals with credit linkages. Other schemes are complementing the efforts for reducing post-harvest losses and improving productivity and incomes. For ensuring faster growth of the sector, our government will further promote private and public investment in post-harvest activities, including aggregation, modern storage, efficient supply chains, primary and secondary processing and marketing and branding. Nano DAP. After the successful adoption of nano urea, application of nano DAP on various crops will be expanded in all agroclimatic zones. Atmanirbhar Oil Seeds Abhiyan. Building on the initiative announced in 2022, a strategy will be formulated to achieve Atmanirbharta for oil seeds such as mustard, groundnut, sesame, soya bean, and sunflower. This will cover research for high-yielding varieties, widespread adoption of modern farming techniques, market linkages, procurement, value addition, and crop insurance. Dairy development. A comprehensive program for supporting dairy farmers will be formulated. Efforts are already on to control foot and mouth disease. India is the world's largest milk producer with but with low productivity of milch animals. The program will be built on the success of existing schemes such as Rashtriya Gokul Mission, National Livestock Mission, and infrastructure development funds for dairy processing and animal husbandry. Matsya Sampada. It was a government which set up a separate department for fisheries, realizing implementation of Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana will be stepped up to 1. Enhance aquaculture productivity from existing 3 to 5 tons per hectare. 2. Double exports to 1 lakh crore rupees, and 3. Generate 55 lakh employment opportunities in the near future. 5 integrated aqua parks will also be set up. Lakpati Didi. 83 lakh SHGs. 83 lakh SHGs with 9 crore women. 83 lakh SHGs. 83 lakh SHGs with 9 crore women are transforming rural socio-economic landscape with empowerment and self-reliance. Honorable Speaker said, their success has assisted nearly 1 crore women to become Lakpati Didi already. They are an inspiration to others. Their achievements will be recognized through honoring them. Buoyed by the success, it has been decided to enhance the target for Lakpati Didi from 2 crores to 3 crores. Technological changes, new age technologies and data are changing the lives of people and businesses. They are also enabling new economic opportunities and facilitating provision of high-quality services at affordable prices for all, including those at the bottom of the pyramid. Opportunities for India at the global level are expanding. India is showing solutions through innovation and entrepreneurship of its people. Research and innovation for catalyzing growth, employment, and development. Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri gave the slogan of Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji made that Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, Jai Vigyan. Prime Minister Modi has furthered that to Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, Jai Vigyan, and Jai Anusandhan, as innovation is the foundation of development. For our tech-savvy youth, this will be a golden era. A corpus of 1 lakh crore rupees will be established with 50-year interest-free loan provided. The corpus will provide long-term financing or refinancing with long tenors and low or nil. I repeat that sentence. The corpus will provide long-term financing or refinancing with long tenors and low or nil interest rates. This will encourage the private sector to scale up research and innovation significantly in sunrise domains. We need to have programs that combine the powers of our youth and technology. A new scheme will be launched for strengthening deep tech technologies for defense purposes and expediting Atmanirbharta. Infrastructure development. Building on the massive tripling of the capital expenditure outlay in the past 4 years, resulting in huge multiplier impact on economic growth and employment creation, the outlay for the next year is being increased by 11.1% to 11,111 crore rupees. This would be 3.4% of our GDP. Railways. 3 major railway corridor programs will be implemented. These are energy, mineral, and cement corridor. Number 2, port connectivity corridors. And number 3, high traffic density corridors. The projects have been identified under the PM Gati Shakti for enabling multimodal connectivity. They will improve logistics efficiency and reduce cost. The resultant decongestion of the high traffic corridors will also help in improving operations of passenger trains. 3 economic corridor programs will accelerate our GDP growth and reduce logistic costs. 40,000 normal rail bogies will be converted to Vande Bharat standards to enhance safety, convenience, and comfort of passengers. Aviation sector. The aviation sector has been galvanized in the past 10 years. Number of airports have doubled to 149. Rollout of air connectivity to Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities under UDAN scheme has been widespread. 517 new routes are carrying 1.3 crore passengers. Indian carriers have proactively placed orders for over 1,000 new aircrafts. Expansion of existing airports and development of new airports will continue expeditiously. Metro and Namo Bharat. We have a fast expanding middle class and rapid urbanization is taking place. Metro rail and Namo Bharat can be the catalyst for the required urban transformation. Expansion of these systems will be supported in large cities, focusing on transit-oriented development. Green energy. Towards meeting our commitment for net zero by 2070, the following measures will be taken. Viability gap funding will be provided for harnessing offshore wind energy potential for initial capacity of 1 gigawatt. Coal gasification and liquefaction capacity of 100 metric tons will be set up by 2030. This will also help in reducing imports of natural gas, methanol, and ammonia. Phased mandatory blending of compressed biogas in compressed natural gas for transport and piped natural gas for domestic purposes will be mandated. Financial assistance will be provided for procurement of biomass aggregation machinery to support collection. Electric vehicle ecosystem. Our government will expand this and strengthen the e-vehicle ecosystem by supporting manufacturing and charging infrastructure. Greater adoption of e-buses for public transport networks will be encouraged through payment security mechanism. Biomanufacturing and biofoundry. For promoting green growth, a new scheme of biomanufacturing and biofoundry will be launched. This will provide environment-friendly alternatives such as biodegradable polymers, bioplastics, biopharmaceuticals, and bioagri inputs. This scheme will also help in transforming today's consumptive manufacturing paradigm to the one based on regenerative principles. Blue Economy 2.0. For promoting climate resilient activities for Blue Economy 2.0, a scheme for restoration and adaptation measures and coastal aquaculture and mariculture with integrated and multi-sectoral approach will be launched. Comprehensive development of tourist centers. The success of organizing G20 meetings in 60 places presented diversity of India to global audience. Our economic strength has made the country an attractive destination for business and conference tourism. Our middle class also now aspires to travel and explore. Tourism, including spiritual tourism, has tremendous opportunities for local entrepreneurship. States will be encouraged to take up comprehensive development of iconic tourist centers, branding and marketing them at global scale. A framework for rating of the centers based on quality of facilities and services will be established. Long-term interest-free loans will be provided to states for financing such development on matching basis. To address the emerging fervor for domestic tourism, Honorable Speaker, sir, projects for port connectivity, tourism infrastructure, and amenities will be taken up on our islands, including Lakshadweep. This will help in generating employment also. Promoting investments. The FDI inflow during 2014 to 23 was $596 billion, marking a golden era. That is twice the inflow during 2005 to 14. For encouraging sustained foreign investment, we are negotiating bilateral investment treaties with our foreign partners in the spirit of First Develop India. FDI is First Develop India. Reforms in the states for Vikasit Bharat. Many growth and development enabling reforms are needed in the states for realizing the vision of Vikasit Bharat. A provision of 75,000 crore rupees as 50-year interest-free loan is proposed this year to support those milestone-linked reforms by the state governments. Societal changes. The government will form a high-powered committee for an extensive consideration of the challenges arising from fast population growth and demographic changes. The committee will be mandated to make recommendations for addressing these challenges comprehensively in relation to the goal of Vikasit Bharat. Amrit Kal as Kartavya Kal. Our government stands committed to strengthening and expanding the economy with high growth and to create conditions for people to realize their aspirations. Honorable Prime Minister, in his Independence Day address to the nation in the 75th year of our Republic, said, and I quote, "We commit ourselves to national development with new inspirations, new consciousness, new resolutions as the country opens up immense possibilities and opportunities. It is our Kartavya Kal." Unquote. Every challenge of the pre-2014 era was overcome through our economic management and our governance. These have placed the country on a resolute path of sustained high growth. This has been possible through right policies, true intentions, and appropriate decisions. In the full budget in July, Honorable Speaker, our government will present a detailed roadmap for our pursuit of Vikasit Bharat. Revised estimates of 2023-24. The revised estimate of the total receipts other than borrowings is 27.56 lakh crores of rupees, of which the tax receipts are 23.24 lakh crore rupees. The revised estimate of total expenditure is 44.90 lakh crore rupees. The revenue receipts at 30.03 lakh crore rupees are expected to be higher than the budget estimate, reflecting strong growth momentum and formalization in the economy. The revised estimate of the fiscal deficit is 5.8% of GDP, improving on the budget estimate, notwithstanding moderation in the nominal growth estimates. Budget estimates for 2024-25. Coming to the year 2024-25, the total receipts other than borrowings and total expenditure are estimated at 30.80 and 47.66 lakh crore rupees respectively. The tax receipts are estimated at 26.02 lakh crore rupees. The scheme of 50-year interest-free loan for capital expenditure to states will be continued this year with an outlay of 1.3 lakh crore rupees. We continue on the path of fiscal consolidation, as announced in my budget speech of 2021-22, to reduce fiscal deficit below 4.5% by 25-26. The fiscal deficit in 2024-25 is estimated to be 5.1% of GDP, adhering to that path. So the gross and net market borrowings through dated securities during 24-25 are estimated at 14.13 lakh crore rupees and 11.75 lakh crore respectively. Both will be less than that in 23-24. Now that the private investments are happening at scale, the lower borrowings by the central government will facilitate larger availability of credit for the private sector. Vote on account. I'll be seeking vote on account approval of the Parliament through the appropriation bill for a part of the financial year 2024-25. I will now move to Part B. Honorable Speaker, sir, over the last 10 years, the direct tax collections have more than trebled and the return filers swelled 2.4 times. I would like to assure the taxpayers that their contributions have been used wisely for the development of the country and welfare of its people. I appreciate the taxpayers for their continued support. The government has reduced and rationalized tax rates. Under the new tax scheme, there is now no tax liability for taxpayers with income up to 7 lakh rupees, up from 2.2 lakh rupees in the financial year 2013-14. The threshold for presumptive taxation for retail businesses was increased from 2 crores to 3 crores. Similarly, the threshold for professionals eligible for presumptive taxation was increased from 50 lakh rupees to 75 lakh rupees. Also, corporate tax rate was decreased from 30% to 22% for existing domestic companies and to 15% for certain new manufacturing companies. Honorable Speaker, sir, in the last 5 years, our focus has been to improve taxpayer services. The age-old jurisdiction-based assessment system was transformed with the introduction of faceless assessment and appeal, thereby imparting greater efficiency, transparency, and accountability. Introduction of updated income tax returns, a new Form 26AS, and pre-filling of tax returns have made filing of tax returns simpler and easier. Average processing time of returns has been reduced from 93 days in the year 2013-14 to a mere 10 days this year, thereby making refunds faster. Indirect taxation. By unifying the highly fragmented indirect tax regime in India, the GST has reduced the compliance burden on trade and industry. The industry has acknowledged the benefits of GST. According to a recent survey conducted by a leading consulting firm, 94% of industry leaders view the transition to GST as largely positive. According to 80% of the respondents, it has led to supply chain optimization, as elimination of tax arbitrage and octroi has resulted in disbanding of checkposts at the state and city boundaries. At the same time, tax base of GST more than doubled, and the average monthly gross GST collection has almost doubled to 1.66 lakh crores this year. States too have benefited. States' SGST revenue, including compensation released to states in the post-GST period of 2017-18 to 2022-23, has achieved a buoyancy of 1.22. In contrast, the tax buoyancy of state revenues from subsumed taxes in the pre-GST 4-year period of 2012-13 to 2015-16 was a mere 0.72. The biggest beneficiaries are consumers, as reduction in logistic cost and taxes have brought down prices of most goods and services. We have taken a number of steps in customs to facilitate international trade. As a result, the import release time declined by 47% to 71 hours at inland container depots, by 28% to 44 hours at air cargo complexes, and by 27% to 85 hours at seaports over the last 4 years since 2019, when the national time release studies were first acted. Tax proposals. As for tax proposals, in keeping with the convention, I do not propose to make any changes relating to taxation and propose to retain the same tax rates for direct and indirect taxes, including import duties. However, certain tax benefits to startups and investments made by sovereign wealth or pension funds as also tax exemption on certain income of some IFSC units are expiring on 31/3/2024. To provide continuity in taxation, I propose to extend the date to 31/3/2025. Moreover, in line with our government's vision to improve ease of living and ease of doing business, I wish to make an announcement to improve taxpayers' services. There are a large number of petty, non-verified, non-reconciled or disputed direct tax demands, many of them dating as far back as 1962, which continue to remain on the books, causing anxiety to honest taxpayers and hindering refunds of subsequent years. Honorable Speaker, sir, I propose to withdraw such outstanding direct tax demands up to 25,000 rupees pertaining to the period up to financial year 2009-10 and up to 10,000 rupees for financial years 2010-11 to 2014-15. This is expected to benefit about 1 crore taxpayers. 1 crore taxpayers would benefit out of this. Economy then and now. In 2014, when our government assumed the reins, the responsibility to mend the economy step by step and to put the governance systems in order was enormous. The need of the hour was to give hope to the people, to attract investments, and to build support for the much-needed reforms. The government did that successfully, following a strong belief of nation first. The crisis of those years has been overcome, and the economy has been put firmly on a high, sustainable growth path with all-round development. It is now appropriate to look at where we were then. I repeat, it is now appropriate to look at where we were then till 2014 and where we are now, only for the purpose of drawing lessons from the mismanagement of those years. The government will lay a white paper on table of the House. The exemplary track record of governance, development and performance, effective delivery and Jan Kalyan has given the government trust, confidence and blessings of the people to realize whatever it takes. The goal of Vikasit Bharat with good intentions, true dedication and hard work in the coming years and decades. With this, Honorable Speaker, I commend the interim budget to this august House. Jai Hind.
Item number 2, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji.
So, with your permission, I rise to lay on the table the following statements under Section 3(1) of the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act 2003, Medium-Term Fiscal Policy cum Fiscal Policy Strategy Statement and Macroeconomic Framework Statement.
Item number 3, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji.
Sir, with your permission, I rise to move for leave to introduce the Finance Bill 2024.
प्रश्न ये है कि विधेयक को पुनर्स्थापित करने की अनुमति प्रदान की जाए। जो सदस्य इसके पक्ष में हाँ कहें, जो सदस्य विरोध में ना कहें, मेरे विचार में निर्णय हाँ वालों के पक्ष हुआ, हाँ वालों के पक्ष हुआ। माननीय मंत्री जी विधेयक को पुनर्स्थापित करें।
So I introduce the bill.
सभा की कार्रवाई शुक्रवार दिनांक 2 फरवरी 2024 को प्राप्त 11 बजे तक के लिए स्थगित की जाती है।
All right. Well, a few surprises. If people thought it was an interim budget, it was only in the length of the budget speech, because otherwise, some of the announcements that have come out are stellar, and we'll talk about it editorially and then get in our guests to talk about this. But I think what stood out amidst all the assumptions that they've made around receipts, tax receipts and expenditures for FY24, the budgeted actual numbers, and for FY25, I think the standout announcement is fiscal deficit as a percentage of GDP for FY25 at 5.1%. I must say, guys, nobody thought about this when they were penciling their estimates.
The base case was 5.2 at best.
At best, maybe 5.3.
Even the net borrowing, and I think the bond markets have reacted, not significantly yet. The rupee is sub 83, so that's a good thing. Bonds have gone down about 7 basis points, so not a big move on the bond market, but it will play out. Banking stocks as well should be in focus zone.
Yes. So top takeaways, if we had to put it, and Neeraj is absolutely right. Fiscal deficit targets are better than expected. She's sticking to 4.5% for FY26, no moving from there. For the current year, it's below what the government had projected. They projected 5.9. It's at 5.8%. And remember, for the interim year, how do you get to that 4.6 or 4.5%? Well, the figure she's given is 5.1%. The estimate was between 5.1 to 5.3. Borrowings are lower than expected in FY25. Revenue receipts are higher than expected in FY24. And no changes in tax.
Just a quick one on capex.
That's what I'm saying.
Big jump.
Expenditure.
11% odd is better than 10% is what the street was penciling, working with. The number that she's given out is 11.1% increase in capex. So that number looking far better. And I think the street infrastructure, the sectors that we've been talking about, railways, will see a rally. And we've seen that play out in the last few days, last few minutes. Yeah. Another smaller sector, and I know I talked about this early in the day, and I didn't really think much was going to come out, was tourism. Those counters also getting excited. So clearly things are working and on track in terms of what the expectation was. But Neeraj, Tamanna, surprising, I think the equity market would start seeing some buying into a bit of a runaway. Nothing's happened on the street.
Well, I think the capex outlay being lower is something that doesn't work.
11.
Yeah, but relative to 30%.
11%.
Yeah, but relative to 30%.
It's a 10% jump.
It's 11.1% uptake relative to previous year. But the point being, because of the previous 3 years, and Mihir Vora was with us in the panel, he was saying that anything below 20% might be something that might be disappointing for the market because they're used to 30-odd%.
Even I think Citibank's report was exactly that. They were working with 20%.
So multiple things have happened, right? And our guests should be with us any moment and we should talk to them. But maybe, one, the 5.8 trending number, and two, the 5.1 confidence comes from these three things. Capex outlay not very high, 11.1. Receipts much better. And the gross borrowing number, 14.1 lakh crores. It is much, much lower. Pranjul Bhandari was on record saying that any number lower than 15.2 or 15.1 is going to be viewed positively. And I think that is what has happened.
Back to the story of the fact that we've made these commitments, right? You've talked, and also talking about GDP, fiscal deficit, she said below 4.5.
Yeah.
Not even 4.6 and not even
very positive there.
Yeah. With a lot of conviction, it's going to be below 4.5. And also what was probably a way to look at it, not too many populist measures as such.
Yes,
that could also be viewed in correct light. Some disappointment on the tax front. There were, I guess, units of people expecting a little bit of tweaking on taxation, but like Mihir and me discussed this earlier, no tweaking on taxation.
And which is also great news.
But
people would like it. But let's
tweaking.
No, we don't want negative taxation. But just before we get to our guests, a quick market check. The Sensex and the Nifty are flattish. On the index, not too much of a movement really because of the budget, if you will. On the index heavyweights I'm talking about. So auto still higher and doing okay. And that continues. So the Marutis, M&Ms of the world, no big moves there or no big developments there. But I'm just saying that the moves on the index are largely muted because the Sensex and the Nifty, in fact, now 0.22%. So kind of reeling a bit under pressure. Now, if we have our guests ready, we should go to our guests and try and get initial views from all of them. Let me start with, to my extreme left, Manish. Quick initial thoughts. What did you make of the numbers?
So it's a as we said ahead of the budget, it's going to be a bond budget. So it's a disinflation budget. Basically, the expenditure is going up only at 6%, lower than even what I thought, 7-odd%. primary expenditure is even lower, which is X subsidy, X interest is likely at 4-5%, one of the lowest in last 20 years. Fiscal deficit is actually versus market expectation of 5.3, 5.4, it's 5.1. So it's sort of paving way for a pivot for monetary policy. That look, we've done enough capex. There's been a substantial jump. So let's sort of get into a little bit of a conservative mode now, so that we pave way for monetary policy to ease. AMIs can come off, liquidity can improve. So in a sense, the onus of actually re-stimulating growth at margin, if at all they were to be slowed down, is going to be with monetary policy, not fiscal. So if purely from the point of view of, let's say, if you're looking for a growth budget, it's not a growth budget. It's a disinflation budget, and which essentially is going to be for long-term, medium-term, very good, because government has done a lot of things. There is going to be disappointment in terms of like market expectation on capex was about 14-15%. I was actually thinking of only 11-12%, so not disappointed because, I mean, even this year, there's a 50-75,000 crore worth of shortfall in terms of total capex spend so far that they've done. So it's 11% is a decent number, 3.4% as a percentage of GDP is not going to rise. So a lot of people were thinking that it will rise to 4% of GDP in terms of capex. I think we've sort of hit a ceiling there. And this is all the capacity of the government is right now. So I think incrementally, the pivot will be back to a 2016-18 regime, where you'll have a 4.5% fiscal deficit in 1 or 2 years' time, and then mostly the local household and the private sector actually sort of re-stimulating or helping economy grow, instead of government pushing it through capex.
Do you think the onus now will be on the RBI when they meet for the next policy meet? So I think that will be more directional in nature then.
That's the beauty of this, the SKD and Modi tango, so to say, I kind of call it, because unlike the previous regimes, these guys tango very well. So far it was fisc, and then now sort of the fisc is withdrawing so that monetary policy can actually accommodate.
Okay, Rajiv Anand is also joining us now on our first quick takes of the budget. Rajiv Anand, Deputy MD, Axis Bank, with us. Very good afternoon to you, Rajiv. The conversation in here saying that it is not a growth budget, but positive on all the key factors. Your fiscal deficit targets matched for this year, better than expected. Capex at 11%, maybe lower than what the street wanted, but you're showing a continuum of growth. What's your first take?
I think I don't want to get into the semantics on whether this is a growth budget or not, but I think clearly shows the intent that the fiscal deficit is going to be managed as we get into the next 5 years as well, which is fantastic. And I think you're already seeing the fact that where the market is expecting fiscal deficit at about 5.4%, 5.1% for next year is a pleasant surprise. And I think if you look at the fiscal arithmetic as well, I think it's quite credible at this point in time. We've already seen the 10-year bond yields rally about 10 basis points on the back of that. I did hear some conversation around allocation to capital expenditure. I think capital expenditure increase is higher than the overall increase in expenses, which I think is positive again. I would have expected a little more on creating more demand at the rural level, not just more importantly creating more rural income, but perhaps that is there in the details, and maybe we can figure this out as we go forward. But I think overall a budget that I think one should be quite satisfied with.
Yeah. Rajiv, just a quick follow-up in terms of the borrowing figure and the point that the finance minister also made, that there is going to be a curtailment in government borrowing better than what the street and the broad expectations are, to be able to give enough room for the private sector. Do you think that is now expected to play out? Are you happy with that number?
I think, like I said to you, the fiscal arithmetic is credible. And so therefore, by definition, the expectation in terms of the gross borrowing program, approximately in the vicinity of about 14 lakh crores, I think is something that the markets are quite comfortable to work with as we get into 24-25. We are certainly we are certainly seeing private capex has kicked in over the last 8 to 12 quarters. One of the things that's certainly happening is the fact that because of the fact that corporate cash flows have been quite strong. Much of this private capex has been funded by internal accruals. Not so good as the head of a corporate bank, but I think it just is symptomatic of what a solid state corporate balance sheets are at this point in time. And perhaps looking at this budget, and once we get the uncertainty of the elections out of the way, I think it's fair to expect that corporate India will push the pedal on private capex as we go forward.
Rajiv, just a quick follow-up on what you said. So net borrowing numbers come in lower than expected. You've got that 25 billion that's going to come our way on back of India's inclusion in the JPM. In terms of, and of course, you've got the onus now shifted to the RBI through a monetary policy measure in the next meeting. In terms of outlook or trajectory on the 10-year, what are you working with? We've already seen a 9 basis point movement, like you said, was an instant knee-jerk reaction for now.
I think if you look at the curve is very flat at the moment. I mean, overnight funding rate is at 675. The 10-year is close to 712, 713 at this point in time. I think the focus for all bankers is really to see, when the funding rates at the short end will begin to ease, which will bring down the short end of the curve from overnight to, let's say, up to 5 years. Down at this point in time. Liquidity in the system is quite tight, and as a result of that, you've already seen the fact that funding rates or cost of funds for banks has certainly gone up. That has certainly put some pressure on NIMs, for banks. And I think as banks, not so much about the 10-year, but I think the focus is to see when liquidity in the system will come back. I do hope that perhaps once the first rate cut in the US happens, and two is when the flows of money, thanks to the JP Morgan index inclusion, happens sometime in June, we will see some easing of liquidity. So really the focus of attention is around liquidity. I think there isn't that much space for the 10-year to move at this point in time.
Right. By the way, just want to mark that the EY think tank is with us in our studios and giving us all the intelligence, and it will be up on your screen as well. In a moment from now, we'll speak to Pranav Sehta as well and get his view too. But Rajiv, just one quick question before Shankar comes in with a question too. I heard you mention that the state capex has been strong. For some people, that's been the story of FY24, if you will, a 40% uptick there. Could that play a part in ensuring that the capex momentum stays high? Because not that the central government has anyways lived up to the whole amount of the capex that was the budget estimate per se. So is this not too disappointing, or are you disappointed with this 11.1% number?
I think what I mentioned was the fact that private capex has been quite strong, although much of that private capex is getting funded by internal accruals. But I think, to the point that you're making about state and state capex, I think that's really where the game is as far as India is concerned. We are seeing, healthy competition among states. We are seeing execution, although execution is different in terms of quantity and quality across all states. And given the fact that such a large percentage of central revenues is getting, there is devolution to the state governments, ultimately the onus of capex execution will rest with the state governments.
Hi Rajiv, this is Shankar here. I had a question.
Hi, Shankar.
Over the past few weeks, particularly after the bank results, there's been a lot of conversation about the credit deposit ratio. The mystery sort of is why deposits are growing slower than credit, and even though the GDP is growing faster. Do you think that if this budget sort of dips in, brings in a disinflationary, brings down the cost of capital, that part of the challenge that the financial sector faces will come down? I mean, this question is in two parts. What explains the lag in deposit growth, and would this budget address that?
I certainly do hope so. Like I mentioned to you, the focus of attention of most banks at this point in time, or most bankers at this point in time, is around liquidity. And I think what we've seen is there are multiple issues that we're currently grappling with. There's a large cash balance that's sitting with the government that is creating some tightness in liquidity. Currency in circulation is beginning to inch up as it typically does as we get closer to elections, and we've seen outflows of FX, and to that extent has created some element of pressure on the liquidity. Ultimately, I think we will have to see some monetary action. Whether it is many more VRRs, OMO activity, or even a CRR cut at some point in time for this liquidity to ease as we go forward. Perhaps some of this liquidity has been tightened because of future cash flows that we are expecting. The JP Morgan bond index inclusion flows. For example, it is not very clear whether the RBI has not clearly articulated what exactly its thinking is at this point in time around this.
Okay, that sort of sets up the floor for the financial sector stocks.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Great. Rajiv, take a moment to thank you for joining in today and giving us your perspective. Really appreciate your time and your thoughts this morning. Now, a disinflation. No, the pleasure is entirely ours. Again, sticking to my left, Ravi, come to you. Thanks for joining in. A disinflationary budget, rightly pointed out by Manish. Rajiv seconds that as well. Is that disinflationary for real assets, real estate, equity markets, or do you think this capex outlay number, not a negative, but a dip, if you will, but the fiscal deficit numbers looking positive, the markets will take it in the stride?
No, I think clearly there's a small bit of disappointment on the capex number, but coming on the base of a very high number last year, even though they didn't achieve their budgeted estimate, but it's still a credible number of 30-31%. On top of that, another 11% growth is not a bad number. So from an equity markets perspective, we were always looking at it from the credibility and continuity aspect. And I think on both the things, the budget has delivered. There is credibility in the numbers, whether it is on the revenue estimate side or whether it is on the tax buoyancy numbers. So we are absolutely okay. And there is some positive surprise on the fiscal deficit front. So that broadly, I think as Manish mentioned earlier, it's more a bond market budget than an equity markets budget. From our perspective, I think most of the focus is a continuation of which are the sectors that the government is going to focus on. And it's not so much of a needle mover, honestly. I think the mantle moves now to RBI, the elections up ahead, and even in US elections, and how those events are going to pan out is what is going to determine the way the equity markets are going to move.
Ravi, just point then, I just want to point out what PSU bank stocks are doing today, and you're seeing that uptick quite positively on PSU bank stocks. So the overall market is just, I think, absorbing everything that's happening right now. In terms of impact of capex, Ravi, I wanted to get a sense from you on what happens to all of those pockets of stocks, companies which have been fueled by large government spends. We don't yet know the exact figure for the railway outlay. Do you see any impact there on infra, etc.? Do you see some cool off there in expectations of how much work is going to flow to these individual companies?
No, so first of all, even though central budget was doing bulk of the heavy lifting, going forward that mix has to change. Central government cannot be doing that much heavy lifting going on. The limits have been reached in terms of how much fiscal space they have. It will be the state government and the private capex that will have to do bulk of the heavy lifting in capex going forward. From that perspective, railway and defense are two sectors which are dependent on the central government capex. We'll have to take a look at what the breakup of that 11% is before I can say that if there is going to be any kind of a negative impact.
In fact, those stocks, rail stocks, Taman, have already started seeing a little bit of a decline. So post the budget, all your IRFC, RailTel, RVNL are all trading with some weakness. So the reaction, clearly, at least for now, knee-jerk it may be, is negative. Pranav, you want to come in? Are you impressed by what numbers were put out? I mean, I think people are expecting an overshoot on the fiscal deficit for this year. We've done really well, and going out as well into next year, those numbers look promising.
Absolutely. So the way I look at it is this is a prudent and confident budget. I think the finance minister seems to have a lot of confidence that growth will sustain, even if the capex is not at the same level as was probably expected by the markets. I think here she is also betting a little bit on the fact that if the borrowing of the central government is to be lower, automatically there will be more available for the private sector, and the capital expenditure push at the private sector, which has so far been a little elusive, will kick in a much stronger way. So I would feel that she is really betted on a far more confident approach, that if I control the fiscal deficit, this government has been very prudent on the macros. And this step, again, while the whole world seems to be still with a lot of fiscal deficits, already seems to be very conservative from a fiscal deficit point of view. So I think she is betting on that the fact that the macros will be good, will bring in foreign investment, will also push the Indian private sector to invest much more. Funds will be available for private sector capex. So I think it's a big bet that she is making on growth sustaining despite this particular.
In fact, that's been a priority for the Prime Minister, putting India on the global map. And we have seen that over the last decade. Things have changed and they've moved. And I think just credibility is what we're currently building. And the focus is clear.
Absolutely. And that also brings in foreign investment in a much bigger way.
I mean, FDI is a big push.
So I mean, if the world feels that India is already very stable, one positive sign, and if its fiscal and macro policies are going to be continuously prudent, it probably might just give a big push to private sector capex, including foreign investments.
So the question to the jury at large, does private capex kick in a big way at a point of time when the world is not quite certain, and in a year which has got massive elections lined up? Shankar, you may want to start this, but the question to everybody.
I think it will depend largely on global cues. You see, one of the issues has been addressed, which is the cost of capital that was inhibiting private capex growth. So by doing this, by reducing the government's footprint in the borrowings market, it has created little room for the private sector. But that little room also has to be supplanted by rise in deposits, which is why Rajiv Anand spoke about the CRR issue. And so the CD ratio, whatever, people have cooked an avial out of it, but nobody knows what is the actual number that should be there. But if the liquidity improves, if the demand improves, but private capex is also haunted by the sectoral definition of the budget allocations. You see, the expectation for everyone was there would be something done for rural demand. Now that is an area that is sort of still wherever it is. Capex was expected to be higher, but is at 11. I think it's a very credible figure because there is only so much that governments can execute.
Yeah.
The absorptive capacity of the economy has limitations. So over a period of time, we will see that. The money coming in from JP Morgan and other indexes is coming into the debt market, which will be only sovereign debt. So it will sort of create room for private borrowers. But they will borrow only when they see a certainty, when they see growth ahead, when they see consumption moving up. And that's a big if in a year where the global environment is sort of uncertain. Mercifully, the IMF has upped the global output. Maybe these wars would sort of clear, the fog of war would clear out. And I still think that there is a latent desire to invest in the private sector, which might be unleashed if the correct kind of persuasion comes on. And the tax policies will play a big role. PLI will play a big role in this.
We didn't see too much of mention on that. Maybe we save for the budget. But
just one second, before we beat the government too much on the growth, just one thing. The FY24 capex number has actually been revised downwards from 10 lakh to 9.5 lakh crores. So on base of that, 11.1 is actually a 17% growth.
Got it.
So it's not like
even the effective capex is a very good number.
Yeah.
No. So, not beating it, because as Manish said in his opening answer, right, that if you set the limits and we see, they've not done this much as well, and the state government capex is anyways 40% growth, so there's a bit of a thing there. But the question only is that private capex and household capex, not quite there, and which is my question, that if they have not done anything in the budget, what Mr. Sehta said, that is the FM sounding confident of growth coming back, but can private capex come back in a year when global growth is looking slightly faulty?
No, I think they, from the central government's point of view, they have laid the ground in terms of, like you mentioned, about bringing the cost of capital down, building the confidence in the business, providing policies which are supportive of particular sector, and global confidence also in India's economy growing is also on a high. So, I mean, I don't see any missing piece in terms of the jigsaw, in terms of private capex picking up. How much pace and all we can keep debating, but I do directionally for sure private capex has to pick up.
So a quick one, there was nothing said on divestment again this time. So that also was a missing piece. Nothing really expected after the disappointment.
Lesser said the better.
So to be fair,
Sorry, but just Manish wanted to make a point on capex before we move on. Sorry, Manish.
Did I? Okay.
Yeah, because I thought you were wanting to answer.
No, I was just keenly listening to him. No, capex actually, I mean, if you have 100 buck of capex in a country, only 25 is done by government and 40 is done by household. Okay, so private capex is not Reliance Industries and companies of capex. It's about 40% is household, and that sort of has been pretty weak for very long, for a good 8-10 years. And because half the households are borrowing money in some form or other, okay, I think a monetary policy is a better way to reach them. Okay, so I mean, there in the budget speech in the beginning, she talked about 3 major reforms. One of them was middle class housing. And I think, you know, in July, as and when she sort of unleashes the next set of things for the 25-year of a developed country, I mean, she would and she should. And I think, you know, every Dharavi, every slum guy should be able to move to a Virars and Vasais of the world in a decent 2 BHK, is what the government should do, which is to lower interest rates, create subsidies, everything that Hong Kong's and many other, you know, East Asian countries have done. If we do that, we will have a decent capex. If you're looking for a capex like 2000s, where the you know, huge unleashing of telecom and power infra happened, and you know 20-25% CAGR happened, that's not going to happen. India's sort of basic foundation of a hardcore capital intensive infrastructure is done, and which is why the private corporations capex is not going to sort of grow very rapidly. Anyway, we're hitting at 30% GFCF level, maybe 1-2%, meaning that's the total investment as a percentage of GDP. It doesn't have much space. I think the only way we can accelerate the capex overall if we can get households to build more houses, buy more durables, like fridge, TV, this, that, everything, two-wheelers. And we want that. And for that, I think a little bit of an easy monetary policy, a little bit of assistance on through credit subsidies for buying two-wheelers, buying houses. If that happens, likely we'll have a capex.
So to be fair, the finance minister had said that this is an interim budget. She has delivered, and she has said more to come in July. Perhaps that's why we are seeing a lot of expectations which didn't make it to the speech, and affordable housing push may be one of them, which is why I just quickly want to also show what real estate is doing. And real estate is getting a bit beaten down this afternoon, perhaps on those expectations that there would be something coming in. In terms of what could be done, and do we have the space to wait for July on pushing out consumption? Let me actually take this question to Mr. Saita. If you want to put more money in the hands of people, you're not doing it through taxes right now. You've said, as is the tradition, I'm not touching taxes. Fair enough. Could anything more have been done, or we have the room to wait till July for this?
Yeah, I mean, from a tax standpoint, I'm not surprised that she says that we'll do something in July, not right now, which is fair. Also, they want to keep the tax rates a little stable. So that's they've not touched it right now. But I do anticipate some stops maybe in July to ensure there's more money in the hands of pockets of taxpayers. One thing that surprised me a little was she did extend, I think, from the speech, we have to see the fine print, the sunset dates for startups and for IFSC, which were expiring on 31st March 24. There was also the expiry of the concessional tax on manufacturing companies, which was ending on March 24. There was a lot of representations that concessional rate of 15% plus surcharge and cess should be extended for manufacturing units commencing production, maybe till 31st March 25, 26, whatever. That she hasn't mentioned. So does that mean she wants that to consciously expire and new manufacturing units are not going to get that? Is one surprising thing, because she did extend it for 2 of those who were expiring, or the sunset was on 31st March 24. But otherwise, she's been pretty silent on taxes, saying I'll pick it up in July. I think the message is clear, which this government has been giving. They want to build a kind of relationship of trust with taxpayers and say that, okay, let's build that relationship of trust, and therefore taxpayer friendly measures in some sense from a compliance etc. standpoint is, I think, what she is hinting at. But the real measures on tax will come in the July budget or the main budget, June, July, whenever it comes.
Let me take the question to Shankar. Is this a populist pre-election budget at all, or they're waiting for all of those announcements before the election dates are announced and when the actual heat and dust hits?
So the answer is in two parts. Every year, somewhere before the budget, some major scheme gets extended. So the free food, free ration scheme got extended last year for next 5 years. Okay. There is also the fact that the Prime Minister has publicly sought responses from various people on what they want in their wish list of the Viksit Bharat. That will form the template for the manifesto. So they have kept some room for the promises now. You can't be giving away everything, then what are the people going to vote for? So there is a combination of this play here. I think it can't be called populist, primarily because it is conservative in its approach. It has brought down the targeted fiscal deficit number is very impressive. The level of borrowings going down is very impressive. And even then the capex going up is stabilizing. I think what's happening here is that the government is betting on the private individual and the private consumption. Private final consumption is virtually half of GDP growth, and that's like a puzzle. I mean, why isn't it growing? Which part of the quintile isn't kicking in? So I think the cost of capital being brought down may kick some animal spirits in the system, and that's what they're. I also think that much of this will reflect in their presentation. One more time, they're making a presentation to the rating agencies for improving India's rating. This has been a constant endeavor of this government that India deserves a better rating, and so they will pitch this 5.1, lower borrowing, inclusion in JP Morgan and Bloomberg, probably one more fund. And see, this is very attractive to the foreign investors, this picture. It may not be very attractive today to the real estate stocks or stuff like that, but on a performance term, this is very good for the financial sector, because there is a potential for bringing down the cost of capital for them.
Ravi, what happens now? Budget is behind us in that sense. We've got what we were looking for, a little bit of it. If you're an investor in this market, how do you view this? What happens next? Does the focus move back to global cues? Does it move back to the elections? Or do we again wait in anticipation for July?
No, I think...
what will you tell your clients at this stage?
I think, as mentioned on the panel earlier, the mantle now moves to RBI. The space has been created. Government has done its bit in terms of providing space for RBI to start implementing its monetary policy. So, currently the most important thing that we are dealing with is the liquidity deficit that we are facing right now. And what steps RBI takes to correct that is what is the most important thing from equity markets perspective.
So all that is macro. Yes, last year when the budget happened, you saw sectors like defense and railway break out. Talk to me more micro right now, right? So if I had to pick a sector, what would it be? Do I have a sector? Can I call a trend into this year, or best avoid it for now?
No, it's the continuation of the trends.
So you would still buy railway, you would still buy defense?
We are still focused on domestic cyclicals, domestic capex-oriented stories, domestic... there are some noises being made about affordable housing. So there is some hope that, okay, that will also pick up pace. But otherwise, the weak link continue to be the rural consumption and the exports. Those two areas, I don't think enough has been done for me to say that the trend is going to change over there as of now. And hence, the current ongoing themes will continue. But from the perspective of the valuations, these are the exact areas where market has recognized and quite a bit of rally has already happened. So a little bit of transition might be underway over the next 6-9 months, where these already recognized sectors might actually peak out, and the ones that are providing the opportunity don't yet have the triggers in place yet, but those are the areas where valuations are getting attractive now.
All right, we'll quickly go across to Janani standing by. She's been tracking the entire budget. She's in North Block. What are the big takeaways, Janani?
That's right, Tamanna. I think we've all heard the big announcements, the numbers that we've been waiting for. But I want to, pull focus to some of the key details here. If you look at, of course, the fiscal deficit, it's now at 5.1. This is a 70 basis point drop from 5.8, which is the revised fiscal deficit estimate for FY24. Now, what I'm more interested is in lakh crore rupees. This is 16.86 lakh crore. Previous year, it was 17.86. So this, again, we can see in actual terms also, there is a big difference. Market borrowing lesser than what it was before, coming in at 11.75 lakh crore. Again, a very interesting aspect here. When we talk about receipts as a whole, an interesting trend that we notice is that the estimation for corporate taxes is actually lower, in fact, than the income taxes this time. Income taxes is at 11.56 lakh crore, whereas corporate taxes is at 10.42. This is a little bit of a deviation, considering that corporate tax expectation is always much higher. Talking of expenditures, the subsidies, ones that we've always been interested in from the beginning when we started tracking this, fertilizer subsidies actually gone down. It now stands at 1.64 lakh crore. Food risen a little bit more considering the extension of the food subsidy scheme. This is at 2 lakh crore rupees, and petroleum subsidy significantly increased at 11,000 crores, 12,000 crores almost. And other important schemes like the Manrega scheme has seen an increase in outlay, but this is very much similar to what was in revised estimates. Manrega scheme's outlay is now 86,000 crores, whereas PMAY, the PM Awas Yojana, one that the finance minister also announced that will be extended to build 2 crore more houses in the next 5 years. That has got an outlay bump from 54,000 that we saw last year to 80,000 crores in the FY25 budget. Three things that stood out for me. I will end with that. Of course, one, the finance minister's focus on deep tech and perhaps investments through that. And the second, of course, is the 1 lakh crore funding towards sunrise sector research for private companies. We'll have to see which shape and form this will take. And of course, the PMGKY enhanced target. No tax cuts, no tax changes, might have been a letdown, but of course, she also spoke about how there'll be a withdrawal of outstanding tax demands. Now, in the back of my mind, this will be a cheer for the industry, considering that up to 25,000 pertaining to FY25 and 10,000 pertaining to FY11 and FY15, these will be withdrawn. This will be a cheer for industry, something that has been litigated for quite some time. Petty amounts, but still an interesting one. Back to you.
Absolutely, Janani. Thank you for that. Janani there getting us all the highlights of this budget, and let's see how markets are responding to it. No big moves in either direction, at least, on the Nifty and the Sensex. You're seeing real stocks maybe taking a bit of a beating today, and to be fair, expectations had run up. They were all kinds of fantastical figures being put out there on rail, on what the rail budget will look like, or what the allocation for rail will look like. Maybe a bit of a cool off that we're seeing there on real estate as well. IRB Infra is another one that we can quickly just check and see what's happening there. And, some of these key names maybe seeing some cool off this morning. But, Ravi, let me come to you in terms of big themes that you see playing out. As far as the market is concerned, will the big relief come from that there is no negative news? It's business as usual.
No, there is a positive news. Fiscal deficit number is actually positive.
I think the markets are becoming mature.
Why do you think there's no real response or reaction right now? Because that was definitely not priced in.
That's true. However, as mentioned earlier, this is a vote on account and interim budget, and it is not budget as an event for equity markets anyway has been reducing, in its importance, and this one is even lesser, if I were to say, because of it being a vote on account. So, for all practical purpose, central government and budgeting exercise can only provide this much needle moving impetus to the overall scheme of things. So, the market moving events lie outside of the budget for me. Most of the policy announcements do come outside of the budget. what RBI does is important, what Fed does is important, and how the elections pan out in US and India is what is more important from the market's point of view.
So in terms of what the Fed did last night, and of course all of that paled in comparison to the very hectic news morning that we had and our budget, etc. When everything is digested and goes down, do you think that that's going to be something which is not half bad? A March cut now out of the way, ruled out.
The market was running ahead of expectations.
Yeah.
It's not that Fed has done anything that they shouldn't have done. It's just that market was running ahead of expectations, and I think some reality check over there. But the fact that we did not have a hard landing last year, and now there are expectations of a soft landing this year, that itself tells you that the strength in the US economy has till now surprised everybody positively.
Are you taking a cash call on your portfolio right now, or
No.
are you completely invested?
No, I mean, so cash call is also divided into what the existing portfolios are and what the new money is coming in. First of all, a lot of people are taking a call not to accept new money. That's not the case with us. We are accepting
And
new
you're
money.
allocating?
But we are not very aggressive in deploying on that front yet. So we are sitting on about 25-30% cash on new portfolios, but the old portfolios are about 5-10% cash.
Okay, let's get across to the CI panel where we're talking to some of the CI members.
This actually does is, one, it improves the competitiveness of the companies in the domestic sector. In a way, it also improves the global competitiveness, because if you come to think about it, while the whole idea is that we don't export our taxes and duties, but eventually our tier 2 and tier 3 suppliers do not get a refund of these taxes or duties. So we tend to pass it on. So I think with the duties coming down gradually, I think this definitely improves our global competitiveness. And I think most importantly, it also promotes the ease of doing business. Because what was happening was that there were a lot of classification issues with, these duty structures, different slabs. I think what the government has done, what the Honorable Finance Minister has done, is to kind of reduce the number of slabs. So that, removes all sort of ambiguities. So I think all in all, a very positive step. And I think the target that we have for ourselves in the industry is of an export of $100 billion worth of exports of mobile phones in the next 5 years. And I think we are definitely inching closer to that. And these steps are definitely very positive in that direction.
It's interesting what you were saying, Manvi, that, she stuck to a clear path. It wasn't, there weren't very many political announcements. One would have thought there would have been a large number of political slogans ahead of the election. But in fact, the only one which caught sort of my ear was when she said previously social justice was mostly a political slogan, all right? Apart from that, it was a short sort of budget speech. There wasn't very much over there. But one of the areas she did focus on, sir, and I'd like you to talk about it, the Skill India mission. We were in fact discussing it even yesterday. Which the government says has resulted in 1.4 crore youth being trained. This is essential for us to take advantage of our demographic dividend, right? Young people, reskilling, upskilling. Are these numbers encouraging, or does a lot more need to be done, even in the interim period?
Well, I would say the numbers are indeed encouraging. And of course, India is a large country. We have a large youth, and that's our demographic advantage. So it will be a journey. So there will always be more opportunity there, definitely. But the numbers are encouraging. I think what is also encouraging is the number of very good institutions that have been set up, and the Honorable Finance Minister alluded to many of those, a few of those, I would not say all of them, a few of those. So I think all in all, very encouraging. And what is very encouraging also is that, there's continued focus. Ultimately, it's going to be a journey, and we need to build it up step by step, and in each step, see how we can increase the pace. And that's what's happening, and so therefore I would say very encouraging.
Ms. Silla, another key point which I noticed she did, of course, speak about the economy doing well. The average real income of people has increased by 50%. That's a very, very major statement. It's not necessarily all that visible, but statistically it seems to be backed by the government or endorsed by the government.
Yeah, that actually, we haven't seen that number being calculated in the past, so it was interesting to hear that. Part of it is, of course, just in India every year, because of inflation, the wages go up 8 to 10%.
But she said real income.
She said real income. I'm not sure if real income has really gone up 50% unless you take in the
it's certainly going to keep us all busy over the next few days.
Yeah, I think you have to take into account investment income. Perhaps if you add that, then maybe real income has gone up, but it couldn't just be from wages. And then, of course, maybe perhaps in the lower segment of the economy, like the farmers and the rural areas, also I think incomes haven't gone up that much from anecdotally talking to people. So I'm sure there is a calculation there that we haven't seen.
Dr. Goenka, you know, this is a slightly philosophical question I'm going to ask you. You're a veteran of many budgets. You've seen it through different sectoral lenses as well. I'm just wondering if the content of this budget speech, in a sense, raises expectations come July, you know, post the elections. And, you know, does that mean, okay, we've spent the last few months really taking stock of India's economic growth relative to the rest of the world, strong position, inflation under control, work to be done perhaps on employment, but generally a pretty good story vis-a-vis the rest of the world. My question is, listening to what you did today, are there going to be really charged up expectations for July?
So let me first say this, that knowing this government, I don't think they're going to start working on July today. They would have already done that work. So they kind of know,
that's why I'm wondering if this is a teaser.
Yeah, so they kind of know what's going to come in July, and this is in a way the preview of what we're going to see in July. So yes, it has raised expectation, but in a very positive manner. I think if you look around here in this hall today, everybody will think that the budget has given, they came to kind of expect nothing much. I mean, you come and listen for a while and go back, but suddenly you see a lot of sort of hints of what might be coming. In all sectors, it's not just about industry, it's about social sector, it's about infrastructure, it's about industry, it's about R&D, it's about education, it's about skilling, everything. So it's a preview which I think, yes, does raise the expectation, but I do believe that we will not be disappointed in July.
You know, the fiscal deficit, and Mukesh, I apologize in advance for putting the critical question to you. The fiscal glide path management seems like 24-25 is probably the best year in a while to have really ambitious fiscal deficit management path. In light of that, are you satisfied with what the finance minister has put out there?
So what you said factually for fiscal year 23-24 is correct, but I think you need to give a context. If I look at fiscal prudence, this is a golden period.
Yes.
You look at where we were immediately in the COVID year 2021 and where we are in 23-24. That's phenomenal. You look at it since the legislation of fiscal responsibility and budget management, 2004 legislation. This is a golden period for two reasons. Number one, not just the exact figures that you're talking about, but also that this is revenue as well as expenditure driven. In the past, fiscal consolidation were largely revenue driven, where a lot of expenditure was going into areas to pay off pensions, to pay off interest payments for market borrowings. She's demonstrating that in the last 3 years, I have not just achieved an unprecedented trend in revenue buoyancy, but also spent in capital expenditure, which will have a multiplier effect in the future. So yes, given the robustness in the tax collection, one would have thought that she would have struck somewhere at 5.6, so that 5.1 for next year would have been more achievable. But I think that if the revenue mobilization occurs at the pace at which it is occurring, both on direct tax and GST front, she may not miss a lot 5% target for next year.
I'm going to get Mr. Puri's views. If you could pull all the strands together of what the thoughts on the agri sector are, and again, it's a space where you have your finger on the pulse as CMD of ITC. Collect all the strands of what has come through in the interim budget speech on agriculture and lay out the path forward for us.
Well, I think it's quite encouraging, and we have to look at it in the context of the manner in which various interventions have happened over a period of time. And as I said earlier also, it's a continuation of the themes that have been there in the past. So in the past, there has been a lot of focus on bringing technology to the farm sector, a lot of focus on aggregating farmers either through FPOs or cooperative, because we have plenty of small and marginal farmers, a lot of focus on digitization. And now I think it's building on that foundation and setting very strong directions as far as, for example, sectors like some sectors were called out. It's sectors like aqua, 100,000 crores of exports, the dairy sector, oil seed sector. That's very important because that's our largest import basket.
Indeed.
Okay, so very very strong direction set there, and I think it's indeed very encouraging. And this kind of sectoral focus, I think it is what is required to enhance the productive capacity and simultaneously create the market linkages. I think this whole idea of 5 integrated aqua parks is fantastic, because you really need an integrated ecosystem. Just like you need a competitive ecosystem in manufacturing, you need it in agriculture also. So an integrated infrastructure can help create that.
Yeah.
So I think all very good steps to really build on the potential that Indian agriculture has got.
Okay. Well, continuity and credibility, I think that is the point that is coming out of that CII panel as well. Well, interesting. Now, just before we take that break, though, we need to slip into one. Want to mark Paytm, still down 20%. Want to mark some of the shipping counters. I don't know if this is belief that shipping will get some infra status, etc. I don't know if footnotes have it. I don't know if this budget was the budget for it, but I think they have come off as well. SCI, for example, is down today. So just pulling off Cochin Shipyard, etc. So the whole shipyard space has come off. But clearly, the talking point of this day from a market's perspective has to be Paytm and the kind of moves that it has made, or rather the kind of move that it is not able to make is just been stuck at the 20% lower circuit. We need to slip into a very quick break. We come back, continue a conversation with Shankar Iyer, get in more guests as well. Stay tuned. India has an ambition.
The ambition is to become the 3rd largest economy in the world,
To have authority in the new world order.
and to hit the $10 trillion GDP mark.
Welcome aboard as we travel to our ultimate destination.
There is more to this journey than just getting there.
Like more balancing and more staying afloat.
More discipline for more changes. More ways to stay determined.
NDTV Profit is ready to go above and beyond to capture all the action.
In the run-up to get the flight off the ground.
Let us witness India at the cusp of the takeoff.
Co-presented by Canara Bank. Together we can. Co-powered by Bandhan Bank. Aapka bhala, sabki bhalai. Special partner, State Bank of India, the banker to every Indian.
India was the 10th largest economy.
Welcome back. You're watching the budget coverage on NDTV Profit. Lest we forget, it's also an earnings heavy day. Adani Port numbers on your screen, and those numbers look strong. I mean, don't quite have the Bloomberg estimates right now, so I'm not completely sure. But suffice to say, a 44% uptick in revenue and slightly better than that on the margins should probably be viewed constructively. That's what the market seems to be doing. Standard disclosure, the Adani Group owns NDTV and you're watching NDTV Profit. But, okay, margins are actually lower, but around that level of 60-odd%. Okay, back to the budget conversations. And Shankar, you making this point in the break that in some sense, this, I mean, as Manish said, it's a bond budget. It's a budget that plays to the gallery, just a different kind of gallery.
Well, let me sort of half in jest say it is also a blonde budget. Because what do the foreign investors look for? Foreign investors look for stability. political stability is pretty much assured.
Yeah.
The questions about majority and all that has been settled or will get settled. The predictability is that there is no messing around with the tax structure. And there is some sort of extension of the sunrise, two sectors, whatever. Now you come to the fiscal macro management. So one of the criticisms about the Indian macro was that as a large economy, which was growing at a pace that was good, it was competing for investments with the likes of, say, Vietnam, smaller economy, Mexico, and others. What is the macro picture in comparison to those things? India had a larger fiscal deficit, larger debt to GDP ratio than some of the countries for which it is competing with, for the China plus one, nearshoring, offshoring, whatever the phraseology. By promising to bring down fiscal deficit to 5.1, we signal to the investors across the world that here's political stability, here is predictability, here we are bringing down, we are being conservative, we are bringing down the cost of capital, and by bringing down the cost of capital, we are sort of at one level moving the animal spirits in India, but we are also luring the animal spirits, the surplus. All economics, global economics functions on the kindness of strangers. So the kindness of strangers for whatever return that they want will come to India, and India will once again make a pitch for a rating upgrade. And all of this, when you see, this is a fairly good, attractive destination. Even now, India has a higher fiscal deficit than the other emerging economies. Vietnam has something close to 4%. Mexico has something close to 3.4%. So that is the target that we are looking at. And I think that this articulated well, the story is presented well, you get a good directorial team. This could win the market's Oscar.
It's needed. Sorry, just the point that it's needed because for all the talk that we do about FDI inflows, 2023 is been a bit of a lackadaisical year relative to estimates.
The next question, right?
Not what she said. I mean, she compared it to a longer period, right, from 8-10 years ago. But from the pitch, as far as the government is concerned, is that FDI is very much alive and kicking.
But you can argue in bits and pieces, but the actual numbers show that FDI hasn't been the strongest in 2023.
And also, just taking a cue from what you said, Shankar, this is great marketing of sorts, right? And this is also ensured we've got into the JPM bond index. So that plays a strong part on FDI and bond markets. Equity markets aside, last year we were not at the mercy of FI investors. In fact, Jan saw FI selling out the most out of India as compared to our Asian peers. Does it have any impact for foreign inflows coming into equity markets per se?
So this is part of the reason why they should or they will consider India, in the sense that, sound macros is something that for FPIs are looking for. In another way, the differential changes. When India's interest cost comes down and the equity returns move up, the argument is that once the capital cost comes down, equity returns move up, the returns will be better, currency is stable. All of this will play into the mix.
Structural.
It is more structural. Last year, why they were selling off has a lot to do with what's happening in the US.
Right.
And now what has happened to China, I think now both FDI and FII money will be looking for a destination. Again, I say that it depends on how they produce and present this movie.
Okay. Now, talking about, if you're talking about this as a movie, was it a hit? Was it a blockbuster? Or is it going to go straight to OTT? Sunil Singhania, founder, Abacus Asset Manager, is joining us, and I'm going to take that question to him. Sunil, very good afternoon. Great to have you here on NDTV Profit and, have your take on the budget. Can you tell us why PSU banks are flying this afternoon? Is there anything exciting from what the finance minister has said. I think the biggest takeaway has been that she's stuck to the script, the straight and the narrow. This is an interim budget and it was delivered as such.
One is very clearly, I think last 3-4 years, we have been having very consistent policies and, I would say budget estimates as well as, the way forward. And today's interim budget has only reiterated that. I don't know specifically what has happened, but the fact that we have maintained a fiscal prudence, roadmap with fiscal deficit this year expected to be better than what was budgeted, and the fiscal deficit next year of 5.1%, clearly is giving the confidence that, unlike the perception that in a budget year, the government might dole out subsidies and all, I think we have just stuck to fiscal prudence and growth in the economy. And I think the bond yields have also corrected by 10 basis points. Bonds have moved up. And maybe, that is giving the confidence that, this whole, I would say, prudence and, focusing on the core as far as the long-term trajectory is concerned, continues to be the same. So I think all in all, a non-event, but the good thing is that they have stuck to what has been done over the last 3-4 years, and hopefully it will be carried forward as we speak.
Okay, Sunil, so non-event, but did anything really surprise you? I mean, one of the beliefs was that it's a bit of a bond budget because the fiscal deficit numbers being reduced, but capex outlay not as high as the street would have imagined, though the effective number still seems to be 15-16% based on the revised estimates for FY24. You happy on the growth front or the impetus that the budget could have provided and has kind of provided?
One, it is not a full-fledged budget. It's a statement. It's more an interim kind of a thing, and that's why you had a very, very short speech, focusing more on the trajectory rather than on the detailing. Second is, I think the growth rate projected is 10.5% on a nominal basis, which is great. I think if you have a 3.5% inflation, then we are looking at 7% real growth rate. I don't think we should be expecting more than that. The other thing we should not forget is that this year, obviously, the fiscal deficit target has been cut 5.1% for the year ahead, and we'll also have a huge flow of foreign money coming into the bond because of the fact that India's bond has been included in the JPM index. So I think we should wait for the full-fledged budget to make any very, very I would say strong kind of a statement. But otherwise, as I said, sticking to what was being done, I think that is the biggest positive. After a long, long time, for the last 3-4 years, we are seeing a scenario where there are not too many changes, which is what businessmen and people like. You want more of the same consistency, clear focus. I think the targeted spend on infrastructure is almost 11.1 lakh crores, which is a 10% growth over last year, which was again a 33% growth over the previous year. So I think in 2 years, we have like a 50% growth in terms of spend envisaged for infrastructure. And I think that is what will make this country move from maybe 4 trillion to 6-7 trillion over the next 3-4 years in a very systematic manner.
Also have with us Prateek Agarwal, ED of Motilal Oswal AMC joining in. Prateek, afternoon. Thanks for joining in. Prateek, Nirmala Sitharaman did as promised. It was an interim budget. It was a vote of account. Big bank announcements are potentially moved to July. Is it back to business from today? Because the markets are lukewarm in their response right now.
No, sure. So markets have had a great time. It is fine if they take a rest for a few days. In any ways, if you see the response of the market post-budget, typically expectations are high pre-budget, and you do expect to see a correction post. Now, this time around, more or less markets have maintained their levels, so that is quite good. Which kind of means there was not much high expectations or position building before the budget.
Right. Sunil, hi, it's Amina as well joining in. Sunil, now what happens to the portfolio? So what sort of a stand would you be taking? Last year, of course, after the budget, you saw sectors that were government focused, rail, infra, defense, do exceptionally well. In terms of spotting the next trend, This budget hasn't enabled an investor to do that, has it?
One is, I think, investors who have stuck to their core portfolios from a 3-5 years perspective have created a lot of wealth. Obviously, if you're a trader, you would want to jump from one sector to another. But as I said earlier, I think the narrative remains the same. The focus is going to be on infrastructure development. The Prime Minister has also added 1 crore of solar rooftops to be installed as an added target. So I think, housing for all, rooftop solar, I think moving away from dependence on imported energy sources, rail, infrastructure, reducing the cost of logistics. I think all in all, I think making India a great place to manufacture, not only for the domestic economy, but also over a period of time, exports. And I think that is how any long-term portfolio would be positioned. Now, technically, you increase your weightage to some financials because bond yields have fallen, you might do that. But I think overall, nothing changes after this budget.
Yeah. So nothing changes after this budget. Perhaps the expectation was that you'd see policy continuity, which you're definitely seeing. Prateek Agrawal, would that be the big takeaway? And perhaps a comment from you on the disinvestment target. If there has been sort of not a black mark, but a negative on list of targets and whether this government has achieved it or not, it would be perhaps your divestment. And that divestment target for FY24 has been cut to 30,000 crore rupees. By FY25 has been targeted, or that target has been made 50,000 crore rupees. Do you think that will give some succor to the markets and something to now look forward to in terms of the next big trigger?
Yeah, I have a slightly different take there. In our line, if you have to sell something, you keep quiet about it. You don't tom-tom about it. Because if you have to sell a large quantity, and you tom-tom about it, the markets get pressurized and the otherwise, price discovery, which the markets are supposed to do, gets hampered. So equity fundraising through disinvestments have to be opportune, done sharply. The players have to be ready all the while. If the government needs money, do it and fast, not tom-tom about it all the while. Is my thought. In fact, a big crack that happened in PSUs happened because we were seen to be selling good assets at any price through ETFs, through whichever manner, and that put the government in a not so good light as weak shareholders. And one good thing that has happened is we are doing it opportunistically when the need of money is there, when the markets will absorb it. And I kind of like it. Second, why do disinvestment if you're any which ways better off versus your fiscal targets? Keep it for the rainy day. I think that is what has happened. So next year again, if they have put a 58,000 crore kind of a number, is a small number. I mean, if you just sell a few percentage points of a few PSUs which are doing so well, you will achieve it. No big deal. And they will do it if they need the money.
I'll just take a quick take from Sunil also on the point about divestment, and a very contrarian and unusual take from Prateek, that what's the big deal? Why do you need the money and why should you go out and sell? Biggest point is why should you tom-tom about it if you are? But nevertheless, it's an indicator that policy watchers and the market more so does look at. Any interesting opportunities there you see, Sunil, from the government's point of view?
So I think one is, I think what Prateek said was very true last 4-5 years, but things have changed dramatically. So first of all, the balance sheet of the government has become very, very strong. The value of the government's holding in PSUs have then doubled over the last 1 year. And I think that at least from a balance sheet perspective, I think it's a very healthy balance. Second is the markets have changed. Markets are looking at supply. And in fact, if you see over the last 6-8 months, whichever company the government has divested has been more than oversubscribed multiple times, and the prices then have even higher up. So I think the whole, I would say, acceptance of government companies has changed, and investors are lapping it up, looking at the prudence with which these public sector companies have been managed over the last 5-6 years. But having said that, I think the revenue, tax collections, and everything is phenomenal. We are in a situation where the budget deficits are coming lower than what is expected, and therefore divestment, if it happens, fine. Even if it doesn't happen, I don't think it is going to make too much of a difference. The only one thing I would like to add is that, say, a company like Air India, which was losing 30,000-40,000 crores every year, I think by divesting that, we have saved 30,000-40,000 crores, which was getting eaten away every year from the budget. I think if there are these kind of companies where, from being a government company, you cannot turn it around, I think that is what the focus should be. Companies which are doing well, earning well, I think only by way of dividend, the government will be able to maybe make more than what they would by way of this.
Hi guys, this is Shankar here. I have a question for both of you on, continuing on this issue of views on divestment or disinvestment. There is a reason why SEBI sort of puts up a number of 25% liquidity in the market, and there is the reason of opportunity cost that is hiding in government balance sheets, which could be leveraged to build infra or to fund welfare or whatever. Having said that, my question to both of you was that if the government has to, say, expand, and both of you agree that the balance sheets are better, that the PSUs are better managed, that they're doing well. So the government creates this list of disinvestments, possible privatization, various categories. But I think the opportunity is more in issue offloading of some more shares, diluting holdings, say, in PSU banks or other companies. If you were, and I'm asking both of you, if you were to create a list of, say, 3 PSUs, which you would say are ripe and would lure foreign buyers. We're also interested in FPIs. So some of the PSUs have drawn foreign investment, for instance, PFC and IRFC and all. So what looks ripe to you guys to sort of take?
I'll just go one step forward. So, listing helps.
Yeah.
Divestment also leads to listing. Listing helps because then there is public scrutiny, there is answerability to the outside investor. And we have seen over a period of time, listed public sector companies tend to be more accountable than unlisted. And I think that also helps. So, for example, Life Insurance Corporation is listed. Now they are being scrutinized. What investments are they doing, and so on and so on. So I think it is also including efficiency. About your questions about which PSUs, I think the government has been very smart. I think when the banks needed capital, the government was providing with capital. And there are so many banks which had government holding go up to like 85-90%. And now very tactically, the government is allowing these banks to raise capital, which will aid them to grow their balance sheets further, which again will aid capital formation and also allow them to provide the necessary.
आज का ये बजट इंटरिम बजट तो है ही, लेकिन ये बजट इंक्लूसिव और इनोवेटिव बजट है। इस बजट में कंटिन्यूटी का कॉन्फिडेंस है। ये बजट विकसित भारत के 4 स्तंभ युवा, गरीब, महिला और किसान सभी को एम्पावर करेगा। निर्मला जी का ये बजट देश के भविष्य के निर्माण का बजट है। इस बजट में 2047 के विकसित भारत की नींव को मजबूत करने की गारंटी है। मैं निर्मला जी और उनकी टीम को बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं। साथियों, इस बजट में युवा भारत की युवा आकांक्षाओं का, भारत की यंग एस्पिरेशंस का प्रतिबिंब है। बजट में दो महत्वपूर्ण निर्णय लिए गए हैं। रिसर्च और इनोवेशन पर 1,00,000 करोड़ रुपए का फंड बनाने की घोषणा की गई है। बजट में स्टार्टअप्स को मिलने वाली टैक्स छूट के विस्तार का भी ऐलान किया गया है। साथियों, इस बजट में फिस्कल डेफिसिट को नियंत्रण में रखते हुए कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर को 11,11,111 करोड़ रुपए की ऐतिहासिक ऊंचाई दी गई है। अर्थशास्त्रियों की भाषा में कहें तो एक प्रकार से स्वीट स्पॉट है। इससे भारत में 21वीं सदी के आधुनिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के निर्माण के साथ ही युवाओं के लिए अनगिनत रोजगार के नए अवसर तैयार होंगे। बजट में वंदे भारत स्टैंडर्ड की 40,000 आधुनिक बोगियां बनाकर उन्हें सामान्य यात्री ट्रेनों में लगाने का ऐलान किया गया है। इससे देश के अलग अलग रेल रूट पर करोड़ों यात्रियों में आरामदायक यात्रा का अनुभव बढ़ेगा। साथियों, हम एक बड़ा लक्ष्य तय करते हैं, उसे प्राप्त करते हैं और फिर उससे भी बड़ा लक्ष्य अपने लिए तय करते हैं। गरीबों के लिए हमने गांवों और शहरों में 4 करोड़ से अधिक घर बनाए। अब हमने 2 करोड़ और नए घर बनाने का लक्ष्य रखा है। हमने 2 करोड़ महिलाओं को लखपति दीदी बनाने का लक्ष्य रखा था। अब इस लक्ष्य को बढ़ाकर 3 करोड़ लखपति दीदी बनाने का कर दिया गया है। आयुष्मान भारत योजना ने गरीबों की बहुत मदद की है। अब आंगनवाड़ी और आशा वर्कर, उन सबको इस योजना का लाभ मिलेगा। साथियों, इस बजट में गरीब और मध्यम वर्ग को एम्पावर करने, उनके लिए आय के नए अवसर बनाने पर भी बहुत जोर दिया गया है। रूफटॉप सोलर अभियान में 1 करोड़ परिवारों को सोलर रूफटॉप के माध्यम से मुफ्त बिजली प्राप्त होगी। इतना ही नहीं, सरकार को अतिरिक्त बिजली बेचकर लोगों को 15 से 20 हजार प्रति वर्ष की आय भी होगी और ये हर परिवार को होगी। साथियों, आज जिस इनकम टैक्स रेमिशन स्कीम की घोषणा की गई है, उससे मध्यम वर्ग के करीब 1 करोड़ लोगों को बड़ी राहत मिलेगी। पिछली सरकारों ने सामान्य मानवी के सिर पर दशकों से ये बहुत बड़ी तलवार लटका कर रखी थी। आज इस बजट में किसानों के लिए भी बहुत महत्वपूर्ण और बड़े निर्णय लिए गए हैं। नैनो डीएपी का उपयोग हो, पशुओं के लिए नई योजना हो, पीएम मत्स्य संपदा योजना का विस्तार हो और आत्मनिर्भर ऑयल सीड अभियान हो। इससे किसानों की आय बढ़ेगी और खर्च कम होगा। मैं एक बार फिर सभी देशवासियों को इस ऐतिहासिक बजट के लिए शुभकामनाएं देता हूं। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
A lot of mention about what some of the nuances have been around the budget announcements. The big picture, though, as we've discussed with Shankaraya and our guests here, is that it's a bond budget. Navneet Munot, MD and CEO of HDFC Asset Management and Chairman of AMFI, joins us right now on the show. Navneet, great having you. Thanks for taking the time out. Do you reckon that it's a budget which kind of balances out the act? Usually that is, the equity markets look out for what's in the budget. This time around, the bond markets have a lot to smile for.
No, absolutely. I think almost every section has a lot to smile for. It is not only the bond market and the equity investor, provided they are long-term investors, but almost every section of the society has a lot to look forward to. This is not only about the income and expenditure account of next 1 year. This is not only about the policies and the programs for next 1 year, but continuing on the theme of an Amrit Kal, a journey towards a Viksit Bharat over the next 25 years. I think that continuity is more important, and I think that will make everybody smile a lot more than what they were smiling till this morning.
Navneet, anything disappointed you? Because there are a lot of things that could actually have pleased people, right? Fiscal deficit numbers and the glide path much better than what anybody on our shows or in the brokerage community had spoken about. Maybe you also not thought of a 5.1%. So is that great, or would you have hoped for, it's okay, let it be 5.2, 5.3, but maybe a higher number on capex?
I think we need to balance both the growth impetus, that over a period of time higher growth will help us in bringing down public debt to GDP, and at the same time the near-term consolidation. I think the budget has tried to balance and both the objectives, and I think I'm pretty okay with the numbers that have been presented. In fact, another credit that we need to give to the finance minister and this government, that we saw that in 2019 and we have seen the same in 2024. Despite being an election year, the budget did not try to increase the fiscal deficit by doing spending which could have been kind of beneficial in the short run but could have impacted the fiscal math over a long period. I think remaining on the path of fiscal discipline in an election year is really commendable.
Navneet, good afternoon. Tamanna here. I'm just trying to understand from a market's perspective and impact. One, why are we seeing a relatively tepid response overall on the markets? Is there a greater expectation that was built in before? And secondly, you know, is this budget in any way, in your view, positive for PSU banks in terms of a lower government borrowing? Is that what you reckon is the reason?
So keep a few things in mind when you are trying to judge the budget by the market reaction in few hours. This was an interim budget. This was a budget which was trying to, outline all the reforms and achievements of the last 10 years. This was a budget to outline the vision for the next 25 years. And then the today's market may be driven by many other factors which are beyond this budget, right? I mean, we have seen the global markets, how they performed yesterday and today. We have to keep in mind the global environment when we are looking at the markets today. But by and large, as I mentioned earlier to Nimesh, that I think I'm pretty feeling very positive that the way I think right notes have been made, whether on the continuity of reforms, whether on credibility of numbers, and whether the conviction that India can become a developed economy. Your specific questions on banks, I think if we remain on the path of fiscal consolidation, it gives space to RBI on the monetary policy side. This is a critical input for Reserve Bank on what government is doing on fiscal side as well as on supply side reforms. I think if we continue on that and then we have a better outlook on inflation, this will create a space for monetary easing over a period of time. Of course, we need to keep the global context in mind for that as well.
Navneet, with the macro picture turning out to be better than what the most optimistic expectation was, do you think in the eyes of an FII now Indian equity markets become more attractive? I'm asking you this because I know for bond markets, FDI, this is a great pitch, right? But for equity markets, valuation was turning out to be a bit of a concern. Do you think this positive news flow could sort of offset valuation worries?
Will it enhance confidence? The answer is yes. Will it result in cash in the immediate near future? I think that depends on many other factors than where India is currently, right? I mean, they are driven by many other factors, including relative valuations, including the valuation, including the bond yields, including their own home market, the flows, so on and so forth. But if you ask me a longer term, whether we'll have greater flows from the global investors, for the reasons that I mentioned earlier in terms of the government policies, macro stability, financial stability, and a stronger growth outlook, the answer is clearly an yes. In the near term, there are many other factors that drive flows, and it's difficult for me to give that view.
Navneet, quick one on the debt market. Equity we've talked about. Give me a sense of what are you doing in the debt market? Would you be recommending buying duration at this stage? Is that a strategy that is looking, significant and also, attractive at this stage with everything that we've seen in terms of bond markets?
So over the last couple of months, Fund House has been running a relatively high duration, and we have benefited from that. We have also benefited from flattening of the curve, which means that longer term yields have fallen more. The 30-year and plus bond yields have fallen by almost, I think, 20 basis point or more, and there has been capital gain on that. Today's fiscal numbers will give more confidence to the market. Of course, we need to keep an eye on what's happening outside India, both in terms of global commodity prices as well as the US Federal Reserve and the global bond yields. But purely from a domestic macro perspective, I think, budget has brought positive news for the bond market as well. We have been telling investors that even the bond markets have been offering a good entry point over the last couple of months, and I think we continue with that call.
Hi Navneet, this is Shankar here. I have an AMFI question for you. 2023 has been a great year for funds. Does this budget inspire continuation of that confidence, continuation of that flows, both in the equity and debt segments? I mean, you had a stupendous 10 lakh crore bump up in the last years. Because all of this flow is captive domestic savings.
No, absolutely. A large...
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, absolutely. So 10 lakh crore addition to the AUM in making the mutual fund industry a 50 lakh crore AUM industry, a large part of that has come through the capital gains, through the mark-to-market gains. Another bigger part has come through the SIP flows, which are very structural in nature. Indians investing in a disciplined manner through small investments every month is a very positive trend. I think these are early days for financialization of savings. This is a structural trend, and we think over a period of time, as mutual funds continue to emerge as a preferred investment vehicle, as a preferred saving vehicle for larger and larger number of investors, and with through MFI and all our industry peers under the guidance of regulator, we will leave no stone unturned that in next 25 years, as India become a developed country, how do we ensure that fruits of that growth reach as many households as possible? These are early days, as I said, while everybody looks at the 17,000 crore plus number of monthly SIP, which has doubled in last couple of years. But if you look at the proportion of overall savings pool, it's still a small number. If you look at 4.3 crore investors, it's still a small number. So we have a long way to go. Incidentally, I must mention that today is also the 30th anniversary for 1st February 24. 30th anniversary of HDFC Balanced Advantage Fund, where if you look at the 30-year track record, and there are a couple of few other funds in the industry which have built track record of 15, 20, 25 years. In this 30 years, the way wealth has got created and the track record that industry has built with also the highest level of transparency and the trust that we have built with investors, we feel very confident of reaching to many more households over the next 30 years.
All right.
One final thought, just on a data correction thing, Navneet. The 10 lakh crore, how much of it was capital appreciation and how much was actual, as they say in Mumbai, rokda?
I think a good part was capital gains, but I think, as I said, heartening feature is that 17,000 crore plus coming to the industry every single month. But again, I mean, India is a growing economy, and if you take a longer term view from 50 lakh crore, and a good part of that, now more than half of that is in equity funds. If equity markets continue to deliver, let's say, low double-digit returns, then you can extrapolate where that number could be over the next several years, and you add the SIP flows that have been coming.
Right. The SIP flow story is one that I don't think gets deterred or is not going to get deterred anytime quickly by any major factors. That's a story that's here to stay. Pleasure speaking with you, Navneet Munot, MD and CEO of HDFC AMC, also the AMFI chief there on how he views the budget. We're going to take a very short break, but stay tuned. On the other side, we get you the corporate view and from the sectors that were most likely or are most likely to be impacted by what we've heard in the budget. All of that coming up after the break. Stay tuned.
Different people believe in different things. In cricket, some hail the king, some believe in God. Some wait for Mr. Right, some believe in swiping right. Some run away from risk, others run after it. Some make a career in a company, some make a career out of building companies. But when it comes to money, everybody believes in only one thing: profit, profit, profit. And for profit, watch only NDTV Profit. We all love money.
India has an ambition.
The ambition is to become the third largest economy in the world.
To have authority in the new world order.
And to hit the $10 trillion GDP mark.
Welcome aboard as we travel to our ultimate destination.
There is more to this journey than just getting there.
Like more balancing and more staying afloat.
More discipline for more changes. More ways to stay determined.
NDTV Profit is ready to go above and beyond to capture all the action.
In the run-up to get the flight off the ground.
Let us witness